I have these cameras, and I will look into the lens knowing that I'm communing with you.
We all came here together to work this miracle of love, a miracle of love, a miracle of love. I'm gonna work this miracle of love. Love with the numinous, and I'm in love with the humanist. The places I've been, the people
I'm gushing with enthusiasm every time I ask someone for directions, and I tell them that I'm a proud dad whose daughter was just admitted into the music therapy program. Anna made this very informed decision that was based on a lot of hard work and self-analysis when she decided that she would be a music healer, a music therapist, an intentional healer with music. She understood that performance was not quite it for her. And I am immensely proud of those types of decisions that we can make in our lives, especially when I see it coming from my progeny. Congratulations, Anna. We are all proud of you. Your siblings, your mother, and I know, greatly so. We celebrate your life. All three of my children are choosing greatness and choosing freedom, and they are informed by all of our victories and all of our mistakes. I love you all, and Anna, we all celebrate this moment with you.
The Moth, the Mountain, and the Middle-Aged Man. Self-awareness, communing with self-consciousness. This book is dedicated to those of us who are just out of reach. This book is dedicated to those of us who find ourselves imprisoned and unable to touch the soil.
I will play on the string. I will learn how to sing. And I will find myself again. Yes, I'm coming. I will tell you good night as I turn out your light. As I tuck you under covers, I'll be home.
Come, dear reader, be with me now as we taste the grass and the sky and the trees. Let this fluid act as a peace conduit between us and our great mother. Come, it is time. To Cliff, Kip, Sean, and Ken, and to my blood brother Kyle, to all those in my life who could see no other path than to take their own, and to Kyle Seitsinger, who was killed by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan, and to Chad, and all of us who must live on after our brothers are gone. This is a story of a man who reaches out for help, and this is how our story begins, with a distress call. It is early one Wednesday morning. Our man has just eaten some psychedelic mushrooms. This time, instead of allowing himself to sink into the soil, he begins writing. He begins writing an email to two friends, a husband and wife who own a publishing company. He thinks that he will send them a story that he has already written, but he doesn't. He withholds. Instead, he expresses novelty, a narration that begins now with the sending of this email to his two new friends. His two new friends who just happen to own a small publishing company, Muse Harbor. Please pardon the draftiness. After all, this is a distress call. The great religions. The great religions are the ships, poets, the lifeboats. Every sane person I know has jumped overboard. That is good for business, isn't it? Hafiz? Hafiz. Translation Ladinsky. Chapter 1. The distress call goes out. Day 1, 5:12 a.m. A middle-aged man sends an email to Muse Harbor Publishing. Dear Eileen and Dave. Dave and Eileen, I won't struggle with the patriarchy right now. We all understand the inadequacies of language and the suffering that comes with all form. I ask that these writings be considered a prayer that may transcend us all, a prayer to transcend these identities that we hold to, these sacred forms to which we say yes. I make this offering to life. I make this offering now, in real time, my hands managing these keys with significant effort, as I have accepted the Godflesh into my body this morning and have chosen to make peace with this gift today. I acknowledge that my support flows deeply from the infinite well within. Also, I acknowledge my own need to receive support and blessings from the other, all those blessed forms from which I am currently individuated. I make this offering to you, this offering of my life, recognizing that the only one that can receive me is the one. Still, I make this offering to you both, as sacred beings. I ask to be seen, I ask to be known, I ask to be held, as closely or as far away as your forms allow today. Today I choose contact, today I choose support, today I choose love. Selah. Begin draft. The Moth. In the evergreen sanctuary of a great adobe house on the eastern high plains of New Mexico, a bearded man knelt before a moth. This moth was at the end of its life. It flicked and fluttered erratically. It grasped and climbed a stalk of grass. All the way to the top of the blade of brown grass it climbed. It fluttered. It fell. Again it flicked, then buzzed in circles, its wings disturbing the layer of fine dust that was so particular to the region, the same dust that found its way through the window sills when the high winds blew in the spring. Vera Rubin. Her father's name was Pesach. He immigrated to the United States in the Roaring Twenties from Lithuania, and this is when he promptly changed his name to Philip. Her mother, Rose, was born in Bessarabia, a region now known as the Ukraine, just 1,000 kilometers south of her future husband. But Philip and Rose did not find one another in Eastern Europe, where they were born. No, they met in the U.S. at Bell Labs, where they both worked. He as an electrical engineer under Dr. Claude Elwood Shannon, and she as an office girl. Together, Philip and Rose had 2 daughters. Vera was their youngest. Her eyes were fixed on the heavens. Vera's father helped her to construct a crude telescope from a cardboard tube, and together they tracked and recorded celestial movements. Her mind, full of questions, which at 10 years old she already valued more than any answer, was adored by her father. She liked answers too, of course, but not because of the resolution they promised. Vera, just 6 months ago, had identified resolution as painfully impermanent. In other words, she found questions to be strangely substantive and resolution only momentarily rewarding. Vera's greatest discovery thus far was that answers never failed to produce more questions. This instilled in her a sense of the infinite which would keep her looking into the vast expanse of space for the rest of her life. Oftentimes, in her darkened room, as she and her father scanned the sky from her window, fixing their eyes on the wilderness of space, waiting for the next meteorite to fall, he would say to her, "Tell me what your name means, my love." And she would respond to him, "Beholder of the blossoming truth, Father." It was then that they withdrew their eyes from the stars and turned their gaze to one another with a smile.
our infant minds are born into this world. Some say we have no choice in where and how we're born. I've heard others say that we choose to come into this life. I prefer the second. Because if I have not chosen this, it seems that I am a victim of this.
The middle-aged man. A middle-aged man walks the chilled winter streets of a college cowtown on the eastern high plains. His little town is not like the New Mexico that you may imagine. It's not like Santa Fe or Taos, those quaint cities with mountains for their backdrop where accomplished artists open up shops to sell their creations to tourists. The far east of New Mexico, while still officially a part of the Land of Enchantment, has much more in common with the rolls and flats of the Texas Panhandle, the land of the scrub brush and awfully high winds. During his first spring there, 17 years ago, the sky filled with red dust and the ground bustled with tumbleweeds, some the size of Volkswagen Beetles, which rolled menacingly across Highway 70. The smaller weeds appeared to him as escaping convicts, dashing across the roads, leaping barbed wire fences, their manic jailbreak across the fields and over the horizon. As he drove his young family to the nearby neighboring city, he was unsure of what to do when encountering these tumbleweeds. Should he stay his course and collide with them, or slam on his brakes, risking a traffic accident and the lives of his children in the back seat? It was often difficult to predict the path of the rolling vegetation. He imagined himself to be Han Solo, navigating the Millennium Falcon through an asteroid field. No, he didn't actually imagine himself to be Han. This particular young man was still Luke Skywalker. This young man never imagined himself as Han. Although the Falcon was his dream to fly, he did love the Falcon. Yes, there was something in every young man that loved the Falcon very much, but this young man was Luke. I hope you will allow me to comment on my own draft. I'll do some revision as we go. The truth is that this young man had never, ever thought of himself as Han. Although, as mentioned before, he did love the Falcon. Luke. There was only Luke. This young man was Luke. But back to these weeds, which were real. Luke is trying to manage these tumbleweeds right now. We do need to remember Han and the Falcon in all of this. And of course, Chewie. I find Chewie to be a very encouraging figure. And what about Leia and her distress message? She's the one who started this whole journey in the first place, right? More about Leia later. The feminine distress signal. Okay, really, back to the weeds. The weeds on the eastern high plains. Yes, it's capitalized. Eastern high plains.
Thank you, God, for cruise control, because it lifts my spirit and soothes my soul while I'm riding up through the Panhandle of Texas. And there's cars and trucks and mobile homes, and the semi-tractors set the tone while I'm sucking on sunflower seeds and a Mountain Dew. And the day's going down to the west up ahead, and the clouds are pink and the sun is red, and one of those semi-trailers just passed me going 85.
Luke assumed some of the weeds small enough that maybe it would be no big deal running over them. But they were still a problem as they caught in the grill or the undercarriage and scratched the red paint off his young family's Dodge Caravan, the same Caravan that would eventually catch fire at exactly mile marker 428 on this same highway just a few weeks from now. The red sky, high winds, and sense of isolation on these plains made him feel as if he'd been stationed in a colony on the far side of Mars. The far side of Mars? Mars rotation does not have the same relationship to the Earth as the Moon, so there's really not a far side of Mars. You can't do the same thing with Mars that Pink Floyd did with the dark side of the Moon. Nietzsche said that God was dead, and he was not incorrect. The story that I'm about to tell you proves it, just as it was drawn from the great Akashic record. Just as Jesus understood himself to be a dead man walking, there are those of us who are seeing past our individuated stories of suffering. The old man waited patiently in the jungle clearing. White robes, flowing beard, a dying god. He waited for the man who had much to do with his imminent demise. Sounds of struggle emanated from the jungle brush just beyond the perimeter of the clearing in which he stood. Using his staff, the old man lowered himself onto a large fallen tree. The disturbance in the underbrush grew nearer. Finally, a figure arose from the multitude of broad green leaves, and there she stood, just having emerged from the bush. She was a troubled woman in her mid-30s, Victorian skirts, disheveled hair wilted from humidity, face stained by dirt. She panted from her exertion. She stood there for a moment, relieved to be free from the forest from which she just stumbled. She scanned the clearing. Her eyes met the old man's. "My lord," she said, as she stumbled to stand before him. "Yes, daughter," he said. She crumbled at his feet. Her eyes were now fixed on the patterns in her own skirt. Tears began as silent, intermittent convulsions in her torso. Then deep sobs arose from her chest. Her face contorted. Her eyes rose again to meet the old man's gaze. Her mouth cracked open in tight expression of grief, and thin strands of saliva stretched between her upper and lower lips. She remained there for quite some time. Her breathing steadied as her eyes met his again. She raised herself slowly to her knees. Then she allowed her torso to collapse into the old man's lap, hugging his abdomen. His hands naturally came to her head in an effort to comfort. The two remained like this for a long moment as birds chattered and screeched in trees overhead. "Emma," said the old man, "where is Charles?" "He would not come," she said. "His stomach is troubling him, and he is filled with anxiety at the thought of seeing you." "That is understandable," said the dying god. "Emma, sit with me." Emma lifted herself from the old man's lap and sat beside him now. She slumped, but she supported herself. "All gods must die, Emma. It is how it has always been, and how it will always be. You know this to be true. I am merely the projection of what cannot be held in one form. I am only one projection of God, one image who points to that which is all, that is real." Emma noticed that a small group of chimpanzees had gathered around them. An adolescent chimp approached the old man and jumped up in his lap. The old man looked thoughtfully into the primate's eyes. The young chimp's mother sat down in front of Emma, offering her curled hand. Emma could somehow sense the motherliness in this creature that seemed so horrifyingly familiar in form to herself. Hands, eyes, feet, and breasts. "I am the god of metaphor, Emma, the god of story. Just as all life has changed over time, so do our stories. This form that you see now, this form that you practice, this lens through which you see life, must pass away to make room for a less, how should I say, a less fatherly figure? Less fatherly, Emma, but not to exclude the father. The mother is rising, Emma. The mother needs to be known if your species is to continue on its path of transmutation. I know that it is difficult for you to understand. I see that you are dying a death. I know that you are hurting. I see you, child. I see you. Let us rest here for a moment. Will you rest here for a moment with me? I see you, Emma. Rest with me here for a moment. Let me hold you." There is a long pause, perhaps a menopause. Emma cries, Emma sobs, She begs for this to be taken from her. She knows this is more than she can hold. She is held by the spirit of this being that is passing into new form. Being speaks. This death that you are dying is still the way of the cross, Emma. It is still the way that you have been shown, but the way that you see me is changing. Your very perception of who I am is transmuting. This image, the image of God, is evolving, just as all forms have evolved before me. Novel forms are created from this process. You, my daughter, are a novel form. You, my daughter, are being born again. Your species is being born again every moment. Without an understanding of this evolution, humanity cannot transcend the binary. Without this understanding, the human species is trapped in the delusion of good and evil, trapped in a static prison. This evolutionary understanding is a result of the birth of the age of reason, spiral dynamics, the spiraling genetic sequence, all that code, the serpent which spirals toward the infinite center of the sun and is drawn infinitely deeper and deeper into this consciousness. Your species is not static. Life is not static. Life is like a thundercloud, changing and ever changing. You must reckon yourself to this knowledge in order to experience the oneness of all life. Your husband has discovered a key to unlocking the door to a much broader space, a more expansive field of consciousness. There will be those who take this message and turn it into something that it is not at all. There will be those who will say that Charles is a heretic. He will be mocked and hated by some for many, many years to come, but this is the promise being fulfilled for those who choose to embrace the deepest callings. This is the very heresy that brings your species into a deeper communion with who I really am. Just as Christ was a heretic, so are the ones who carry the light after him. It is no different with you, Emma. You are carrying this. You have said yes to your husband, and you have said yes to life. He has carried this as far as it will go. It is coming, Emma. There is no stopping it. If it's not Charles, it will be someone else. The message of the prophet must amplify the oneness in the ears of the people. The message of the true prophet recognizes all as one and the one as all. Those who see all creatures in themselves and themselves in all creatures have no grief. How can the multiplicity of life delude the one who sees its unity? The self is everywhere. Bright is the self, indivisible, untouched by sin, wise, immanent and transcendent. He it is who holds the cosmos together. The Upanishad. Down from the trees. There once was a little monkey who lived in a tree. He hardly ever came down, while all the other little monkeys would get down on the ground and play around. And that little monkey's mama said to him, "I love you, little monkey. Why don't you go play on the ground with all the other little monkeys?" And that little monkey said to his mama, I don't want to go play with the other monkeys. Well, they're mean to me. One time, one of them told me that I had a short tail. That made me sad. Then I looked at all the other little monkeys' tails, and it's true. Everybody's tail is longer than mine, and that's why I don't want to go play with all the other little monkeys. That's what he said. And he sang a song that went something like this. He'd sing, "My tail's shorter than any other monkey I found, and that's why I don't wanna go play with all the other little monkeys on the ground. Little monkeys, and that's why I don't wanna go play with all the other little monkeys on the ground." That's the song he sang. You see those other little monkeys over there on the ground playing with that turtle? Look at that. And that monkey up there, he doesn't look very happy, does he? Look. What do you think his mama's gonna say? Well, that little monkey's mama was very wise, and she knew that this was not a problem that could be taken care of all at once. So, she just swept that little monkey up in her arms and she sang him this song. I love you, little monkey. Your tail's just right. You make me happy just the way you are. I love you, little monkey, and your tail's just right. You make me happy just the way you are. Day after day, night after night, that mama monkey would hold her little monkey in her arms, singing, I love you, little monkey. Your tail's just right. You make me happy just the way you are. Well, I love you, little monkey, and your tail's just right. You make me happy just the way you are. And you know what happened? Well, after a while, that little monkey started to understand that he was just right. And you know what he did? Well, one day he crawled out of his mama's arms. He crawled down the tree, and when he got to the bottom, all the other little monkeys saw him, and they stopped. And there was one little monkey whose ears just happened to be a little bit bigger than everybody else's. And that monkey with the bigger ears, he said to the short-tailed monkey, he said, Hey, Mr. Short-tail, what you doing down out of the tree? Well, at first, the short-tailed monkey felt sad, scared again. But then he heard his mama singing from high up in the treetops, or maybe it was just a memory of his mama singing. We're still not quite sure, but her voice was beautiful, and she sang, I love you, little monkey. Your tail's just right. You make me happy just the way you are. Well, I love you, little monkey, and your tail's just right. You make me happy just the way you are. Do you see how he perked up there? Yeah. Yeah. So, that little short-tailed monkey just straightened right up, and he sang a new song. He sang, my tail is shorter than any other monkey I found. Boom, boom, boom. But that don't make me wanna stop playing with the other little monkeys on the ground. Yeah, it's not every day that your song changes, is it? And sometimes people that we love can help us to change our songs. But we have to choose for ourselves, don't we? Other people can encourage us as much as they can, but in the end, we have to decide to listen to that song, don't we? Yes, we get to decide. And there they are. Look.
Audience is a friend, and I cultivate this friendship with my audience.
Yeah. Okay. The short-tailed monkey decided to participate, didn't he? Yes. He's going to bring what he's got. I was fascinated by that when I was a child. I'm fascinated by Australopithecus. I've heard that there were many different species of humanity, different bipedal creatures walking, so many different skeletons, and a whole lot of mystery surrounding it. There is this story that somehow the hominins came down from the trees and began walking upright through the savannas, and that there's this great story in which humanity rises up and comes down from the trees and then stands up and begins some kind of great migration. And there's a story in the midst of that yes, there may be a lot of questions surrounding it, but it can also be a story of oneness, a story of connection for all of humanity. I've heard that humanity was born in Africa, and so in a sense, this is where we all came from.
Take another run
take another run. You got to get back, you got to get back up, you got to get back, you got to get back, you got to get back, you got to get back up.
That's the song he sang. You see those other little monkeys over there on the ground playing with that turtle?
We begin to be able to find the truth in all the stories.
What do you think his mom is?
We apply ourselves at these universities, earning our degrees to qualify ourselves to practice in the institution. Some of us will remain in the institutions. Some of us will remain in the old form. Some of us will take the education that we gained in the institutions, and we will move beyond that. We will expand. We will become teachers and healers of our own authority. So we can celebrate education at all developmental levels, knowing that some of us in this lifetime will move past these institutions, and some of us will not. And it's all understandable. It's all part of the process. And it's good if those of us in the institutions and outside the institutions can understand and respect one another.
Brother Jack came back from a hopeless war, barely half the man that he was before, and quite discouraged by the goings on from the radio. Sometimes he sat out by the chicken shed and he could talk for hours with a Rhode Island Red about particular memories that had been rolling round in his head. And he'd say, Joe, Joe, I've got a pain down in my soul, and nothing seems to make it go away. And I don't know how much longer I can go. I don't know how much longer I can go. Daddy was on the tractor, Mama was by the stove, and I was stacking branches in the pecan grove. Little Jesse was on his stick horse, Sister Molly was gathering eggs, Brother Jack was down by the river with a shotgun between his legs.
Middle-aged man. 17 years had passed on the eastern high plains since those red Martian dust storms. This slender man with the graying beard had recently purchased an olive drab jacket which he felt he needed for a poorly timed and insufficiently planned hitchhiking excursion in the dead of winter. Determined to make it to Oklahoma City to visit his mother, he got only as far as the West Texas town of Amarillo. He arrived there by the generosity of a truck driver named Mark, and a truck driver named Joseph, and another one named Brad. After climbing down from the cab of Mark's white semi-truck at an Amarillo truck stop, he eventually found what seemed like a suitable on-ramp from which to beg a ride. There he sat, cross-legged with his cardboard sign on the banks of I-40. He remained there for an hour and a half, in the cold, the sun setting. He waited for a ride that was never offered. Frustrated by the law that prevented him from hitchhiking on the interstate, unable to provide his own forward momentum, he resigned to the nearby Denny's and humbly gave up his hitchhike when his younger friend Jerry called to check his well-being. "How are you, my friend? Are you okay? I'm worried about you," said Jerry. Yeah, Jerry, I think I'm done. Could you come get me?" said the middle-aged man. The miracle in all that being the man's seamless transition from determination to surrender without any hint of self-hate.
Who is this you?
The miracles. That's our focus here. There are no small miracles. There are no big miracles. There are no easy miracles. There are no difficult miracles. They are all the same size and difficulty level, flowing from the one heart of love. this is what was being confirmed in him as he read A Course in Miracles.
Now I see that light in you.
Some were confused by the hitchhike attempt. His youngest daughter asked, "Is your car broken, Dad?" "No," he answered. "I've just always wanted to put on my pack and start walking. I was answering a call, trying to be true to myself. It was the most honest expression today. It was as genuine as I could allow myself to become."
We raised our hands, we spoke in tongues, our bodies shook for our salvation. Pure healings born deep in shadowlands, along with those academic incantations. We watched those buildings fall. Number 7, she's forgotten. But some of us did see. We may say the earth is flat. We may say Darwin's heart was rotten. But the mind of Christ still thinks cosmically. Oh, the heart of Christ, she still beats constantly. Oh, God, forgive her, for she knows not what she does. She is sick, she is lonely, she is sad. The bride of Christ is broken, heaped there on the floor. She's thirsty for a drink she's never had. You know she's thirsty for a drink she never had. I am the Father, I am the Son, I am the one who drives those nails. I am the ocean, I am the risen one. Our love, our love, our love, she never fails. Our love, you know she never fails. She never fails. She never fails. To participate in this form. Yes. We know the story of the lady who is running through the forest. Maybe it's a young man this time. A young man is running through the forest, being chased by tigers.
He had recently resigned his job, but after handing in his resignation letter, he found himself unable to work through the next 2 weeks. It was then suggested to him that it might be appropriate for him to be placed once again on medical leave. He accepted that offer. With gratefulness, he accepted all that was offered.
And there is a single ripe red strawberry. And so he does the reasonable thing. He takes the strawberry.
Vera Rubin. A white mouse was currently at the forefront of Vera's mind. A little white, matty-haired mouse with wheels. She'd met him at her father's laboratory. Theseus, Dr. Claude Shannon's creation. Theseus, a little furry creature with wheels for feet. He could think or learn, even remember. Vera, perched upon a laboratory countertop, watched quietly as Dr. Shannon placed that little furry guy into the maze. Again and again, the doctor gently placed Theseus into a different part of the labyrinth. The labyrinth, current centerpiece of Dr. Shannon's laboratory, he placed him down. Again and again, the mouse found its way out, until finally, no matter where Dr. Shannon placed Theseus, he found his way out without touching a single wall. There she is. Vera, can you see her? perched there on the countertop. Isn't she something to see? Look at her there, on her tiptoes, and now she is crouched in anticipation. There she is. She's chewing gum. Now she stretches the gum between her fingers. Look at how she cannot see anything but Theseus. Yes, Theseus was learning. As she watched, something new came alive in Vera. There was a recognition within herself as she witnessed Theseus' learning process. Two minds came together as one. She was endeared to this creature. As the little mouse had been named after a myth, so the mouse became a myth in Vera's consciousness. Vera, who was now aware of his presence. And it was in this moment, as Theseus was regarded in this way, that Theseus somehow became aware of Vera's gaze. Something awoke in him that was deeper than his primitive circuitry. What Vera felt in this moment for the little mouse was... End draft. Dave and Eileen. Eileen and Dave. When do I press send? The button presents itself to me now, and so I leave you. The middle-aged man. The middle-aged man hovered there, at the very edge of the observable universe. The middle-aged man's brother, Albert, he rode light beams through the sky, and it was his brother Albert's adventures on those light beams that had inspired the middle-aged man to venture out into this impossibly distant location, to the very edge of the observable universe. Can you see him there, dear reader? Do you see what he has in his hands as he hovers? He grips tightly the handle of what appears to be some kind of cosmic melon baller. Do you see how he grips the handle and uses the tool to scrape from his very own psychological insides the residue of all of the superstition, all the ignorance, and all the magical thinking? He hovers here in this space created by his imagination, yet he is very much a rational being. In fact, it was his ascent to reason that drew him out to this sickening vantage point, staring into the void, the unknown, that which we cannot yet detect with our five senses or our observational instruments. The middle-aged man uses this tool, this rational scraping tool, in much the same way that his ancestors used flaked flint in the scraping of the meat off the bones. The crushing of the bone and the sucking of the marrow was an earlier innovative behavior for which is only required a hammer stone. Clovis points, addle-addles, and cosmic melon ballers. Tools developed and used by Homo sapiens on the eastern high plains. The Blackwater Draw anthropologists tell us that there used to be pine trees out here, and that there was immensely more moisture on the ground. There were large, hairy mammals, tusks and trunks, and we were hunting those creatures together, communing in the brutally sacred nature of our Great Mother. And so it came to pass that the middle-aged man hovered there that day at the very edge of his own observable universe, staring into the void, surrendering to the deconstruction of all the anthropomorphism that ever was and that ever would be. Vera Rubin. Vera's intellect grew with her curiosity, and it was apparent to her father that both of his daughters were destined to expand themselves beyond the traditional role of women in American culture. He and Rose did all they could to encourage their daughters to realize their full potential.